I love exploration, being a part of NASA and being a part of the work that we do, coming to these environments to understand how Earth can inform us about these really distant places. It's really satisfying. I'm Jen Stern, and I am a planetary geochemist at Goddard. I specifically look at chemical signatures of life and habitability in the environment.
Here's the soft sand.
We are interested in the CO2 that is bubbling up from the vents in the center of the lake. Iceland is a place where you can actually access the carbon coming from the Earth. And when we go to other planetary systems, one of the ways to understand whether life could ever be present there or even is present there is understanding the cycling of carbon in systems.
This is a rift zone. This is actually where the continental plates are breaking apart. And you have magmatic fluids coming up through that. Hi, my name is Dr. Bethany Teeling. I'm a research scientist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. I primarily work on ocean worlds research. I create other worlds in the lab often, and then sometimes I get to visit places that we think are like ocean worlds, like Iceland. If we're trying to emulate any process in a place that maybe has some life but not a lot of life, this is one of the best places on Earth because it's so new geologically, and that's just not something that you can really create in a lab.
Today is, there's quite a bit of wind today. We are going to wade out to a vent that is shallow enough that you can actually get there without the boat.
I did take another sample.
Okay.
We're going to be walking through the water on the way to a particular hydrothermal vent that's under the water, and we're going to be collecting samples. So we'll actually have a probe that allows us to produce a transect so we can walk out to it and say, oh, how's the environment changing as we approach this particular vent? Let's see if we can follow maybe a little further out this direction. Okay, this is great. Excellent. This is what I was hoping to see.
Yes.
Okay.
It's pretty out there too. It's cool.
Yeah. And what we're trying to do is sample the gases that are also coming out of that. So those gases are actually being created by the rock and the water interacting together. Also, oh yes, bubbles.
Look at that.
Look at those bubbles.
Are we seeing pH?
6.74.
Okay. That is a drop.
We're looking really specifically at the carbon cycle.
Learning about how carbon is cycled in a system is really important, whether we go to an ocean world,
Like on Enceladus, where we think that there are hydrothermal vents.
that's then bringing water, CO2, other volatiles and organics up.
How could carbon cycle in that system and then be available for life? And then how might we see that on another planet or a moon?
It's for us to understand the search for life on ocean worlds, and also we're learning which measurements are the important ones.
If they have similar systems, how would we even identify that? So I will be performing scuba diving to collect the gases in those samples. We'll do that probably in two ways, one of which is that there's so much gas that we could actually turn over a bottle underwater and just let it fill with gas. So that's just a really easy way of collecting it. We're also collecting some sediments just so that we understand like what is the actual carbon that's already in these rocks, and therefore how is that being transferred into the gaseous system and the liquid.
The most obvious extrapolations of this work are to Europa, where you have a big ocean under a very thick ice, and where we think that there is possible hydrothermal activity at the base where the water and the rock meet.
There are hydrothermal systems on Enceladus at the seafloor. It has an ice shell, and then there's a subsurface ocean, and there's a rocky substrate. And that rocky substrate is actually very similar, we think, to this substrate here.
Those are the two that we've targeted with NASA missions, and that we could actually ground truth some of what we measure here.
Now we're getting to this point where we're taking those ideas and we're like, okay, you guys found carbon, you found all of these amazing processes that could happen. Now can we tease those out in this environment right here?
We were
sniffing.
We were sniffing.
Yeah, sniffing for pH changes.
Just right in here, that's why we stopped here for a while. There's like what looks like relict
Yeah.
deposits. So they're
Yep.
kind of whitish, altered material, which is really interesting. Feel this core, it's actually like really nice and warm.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that cool? See like the bubbles
Yeah.
forming in here? Like how cool is it? Yeah, look. It's awesome.
It's a gassy core.
So there's a hypothesis that underneath the ice shell of Enceladus, that there's this organic ridge layer, and that the gases that are being ejected out of the vents, they end up forming like this sort of bubble layer. So I'm kind of like really excited about this. I've never seen this in the field. It's just such a beautiful prime example of that. So you can kind of see this cavern forming in their sediment and those bubbles.
You wouldn't look at that and say that's life.
Sure.
But you would look at that and you would say there's chemistry that is similar to what we think started life on Earth. So it's one of the hypotheses for the start of life on Earth is that chemistry.
So cool. So this is definitely my highlight of the day.
Yay!
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Found it. And so a lot of the work that we do out in the field helps us figure out where we sample and how we sample. And then we use all of those lessons to help build better spacecraft and then perform better missions, which is incredibly exciting.
It may not quite be going to those other worlds, but we're going to a natural system in an environment where you're just focused on the work, focused on what you're doing.
Everything is a puzzle. There's just so many things that you could answer about the world around you, and I am just so curious about all of those things.